fire, earth, air, and water, places of raw power and impossible truths, realities unsoftened by mortal compromise. They are the firstborn bones of creation, the four anchors of matter and energy, locked in a ceaseless waltz of harmony and violence. Chapter 1. The Sphinx. In the beginning, there was only phlogiston, the luminous ether, the spark of all things. From this celestial sea, Io, the hidden one, shaped spheres that would become worlds, lanterns in the dark. They were hollow and dead, yet beautiful, coveted by the Primordials, immense beings born of the elemental chaos, who wove storm and stone, tide and flame, into the tapestry of early creation. They played gods before gods were born. Within the elemental chaos, the inner planes churned. Fire, a plane continually ablaze. The air tasting of copper and regret. The smell of ash seeps into the soul. Here, dreams burn before they could form. Earth, an endless tomb and treasure hoard. The stone, groaning with memory. Riches lay buried like secrets, but they laid beneath traps and curses no greed could resist. Air, boundless and terrible. Falling forever in a place with no up or down. It felt like flying until it felt like drowning. Water, vast and empty. An ocean without surface or floor. Beneath each wave was another wave. Currents that remembered nothing, and between them, balance, eternal and dangerous. For where the elements touch, they created, and where they clash, they destroyed. The multiverse breathes on this balance. In the mindscape of the sleeping fire, primordial Akazar, the Sphinx Firaline, remained shackled by a riddle turned inward. A curse of flame that bound her to the dreaming mind she had once chosen to watch. If Ahazar ever awoke, the world would burn. Firaline knew that if she remained, she would slowly unravel beneath the weight of a mind too powerful for her own. There was only one answer, 4 tasks, 4 artifacts, 4 trials in the heart of the plains. She stood before Valen and Malric, her fur catching psychic winds like silk threads. Her eyes burned with timeless wisdom, and something else stirred within her magical fur, hope cautiously worn. She spoke in riddles, as was her way. To sever flame from flame, bring me what cannot be consumed. From the city of brass, a storm-forged shield, the storm armor, proof that fire can be turned aside. From earth's sevenfold mazework, the voice of the buried king, the rababar of the Tao, carved from the bones of forgotten song. From the citadel of ice and steel, adrift in the endless sky, a whisper hardened into metal. The white copper ring of fire, forged where breath becomes blade. And from the city of glass beneath the watery tides, a tear that won't drown. The storm rider's pearl, born in the eye of the abyssal trench. These 4 together will draw out the flame that holds me and seal Akazar's madness away forever. But beware, the way is scattered with false paths. Even my sight lays astray from seeing all their shapes. She turned to them fully, her wings folding around her like pages closing on a book. Go now, return to the waking world. You will need all your cunning. Tarmaloon welcomed them like a breathing beast. The city, curved alike to a gaping maw from the sky. It was a wonder of stone and smoke, crouched around its harbor. Its buildings reached for the sky in sharp, slanted angles, shaped by centuries of fire laws. Fires still bloom now and then, hot, sudden, and always fatal. Carts rattled down wide streets filled with merchants, pilgrims, and fire priests. By night, the crowds glowed red in the ever-present light of Akazar's sleeping flame, roaring in the city center, with the Primordials' beating heart. The twins returned to Black Banner's ride, their home tucked between 2 tall stone libraries, marked only by a small brass plaque in the shape of an eye wreathed in illusion. Inside, They descended past the mundane stacks into their hidden sanctum and began to gather the things they had never dared use, the slippers of shadow walking, stitched with threads from the plane of shadow. Perfect for slipping through walls and minds alike. The illusionist's braces, remnants of a Demir agent's legacy, pulsing with the capacity to layer spell upon spell, until reality strained to hold the lies. And most dangerous of all, the modified deck of illusions. Each card a living performance, enhanced with the breath of a dragon. It did not merely project illusions, it embodied them, waking echoes of worms too ancient to name. They cloaked themselves in preparation, their minds as sharp as their magic. And then, back once more to the pillar of flame, the heart of the sleeping god. They stood where the lines between thought and fire blurred. With word and will, they re-entered the mindscape, passing into the shimmering threshold where the impossible becomes commonplace. Firoline awaited, regal and calm. Psychic winds tugged at her golden crown. With a flick of her wing, she summoned the first gate, a portal rimmed in brass and burning heat, within which shadows of salamanders, Ifriti, and lava-born machines flickered. "This is the city of brass," she said, "the forge of empires, the throne of fire. Seek the storm armor, but know this, in that place, everything has a price." And with that, the brothers stepped through, into heat, into splendor, and into the jaws of the first task. Chapter 2: Fire. The portal opened in a roar of brass and heat. As they stepped through, the city of brass unfurled before them, a sprawl of towering minarets and gilded domes, flames dancing along archways, and smoke curling ink across molten sky. One of the brothers, Malric, the more poetic of the two, recalled a line from a planar tome he'd once read in Candlekeep. "Imagine seas of platinum and liquid flame. The crimson pillar with fires hot enough to sear the gods, and the infinite delights of the city of brass." Reality met expectation. The city gleamed and illuminated as a forge-tempered jewel. The crimson pillar rose in the distance, visible even through the sulphurous haze, and the scent of exotic spices and burnt copper filled the air. But their minds were fixed on the task. They were here for the first of the four, the storm armor, an artifact forged in fire with the power to resist it. The brothers, having grown under the ever-burning gaze of Akazar's pillar, were no strangers to fire. Their studies of the elemental chaos had prepared them, and they knew where whispers of such an artifact would cling like embers in the wind. The Rookery, a tangle of twisted alleys and collapsed towers. The Rookery was infamous across the plains. Even the Sultan's enforcers tread carefully here. Gambling dens pulsed with elemental magic. Pleasure gardens flickered with illusion. And the fighting pits, those never closed. One such pit was owned by an Ifriti slaver, a brute whose name was whispered in hushed tones. Jamal Eliji Wan al-Iwlid, a clever member of the Brotherhood of True Flame, and the man who held the key to the storm armor's location. The brothers proposed a deal, a gamble, one wish. If they could best the pit's champion, the slaver would give them the knowledge they sought. Their freedom was the stake. Jamal agreed with a smile like a dagger. The pit was a scorched arena suspended above a pool of lava, its walls lined with fire giants, Azers, and whispering mephits. The crowd roared, chains clinked, the ground shimmered with heat. The opponent, a monstrous Ifriti, clad in fine mail and wreathed in the typical flame of an Ifrit. His arrival alone warped the air, the flames beneath in the pit, moving in rhythm to his footsteps. The fight began. The twins moved like dancers, Misty stepping across the superheated stones, their slippers of shadow walking, saving them from a fiery fall. Balls of fire exploded around them. One struck Valen, but he grit his teeth and surged forward. Then, the wall of fire rose, and the battle turned desperate, until Malric flicked a card skyward. The silver dragon from their modified deck of illusions shimmered into existence. Its roar shattered the din. The Afriti faltered under its paralyzing breath. Valen smirked. "Couldn't you have done that earlier?" Malric chuckled. "Where's the fun in that?" In perfect unity, they pressed the advantage. Shadowblade found its mark, and the Afriti dropped to his knees. Valen called for surrender, but Afriti do not surrender, and up came a desperate strike, trying to aim a killing blow. Malric reacted first, his blade driving through fire and pride alike. The Afriti collapsed. The crowd howled. They approached Jamal, who had watched with growing amusement. With a flick of his hand, the air shimmered and the pit around them reformed into a flaming study. An illusion, but powerful. There stood the storm armor, suspended in a glass case of conjured flame, and beside it, a burning mansion located within the plume district of the city. Watchfire House, near the Gate of the Fallen. Their prize was not in the pits. It was in the heart of the city. They surveilled the mansion with care, sending forth a flame-touch familiar to map its defenses. Afriti guards circled. Flame elementals danced between windows. They noticed one archway near the western side was lightly guarded. Perfect. Shall we do lockup? Malric grinned. Valen groaned. I hate lockup. But it works. Disguise, deception, infiltration. Malric became an Afrit, Valen his captive. Chains made of illusion bound him. They approached the guard. I have something for the collector, Malric said, voice rumbling. The guard, suspicious, led them inside, past frescoes of Sultan Maraki, past fire newts scrubbing walls, past flame spirits lounging in gardens of glass. On the third floor, the collector's study awaited. Wait here, the guard said. If he finds this a waste of time, he'll roast you himself. The door closed. Silence spells, illusions, motion. They created a hallucinatory replica of the study, laid over the real one. Then, detect magic, revealing a trap on the case, a dual layer, alarm, and a wall of force. No time to hesitate. Dispel magic, woven in tandem. The barrier vanished. The storm armor was in their hands. Then, footsteps. The door creaked open. Two voices. Where did you say they were? Said a commanding, deep voice. They may have gone to the lower levels. I'll kill them myself. The door closed again. Without pause, the brothers cast Dimension Door, emerging in the streets below, smoke in their wake. Malric groaned. Lock up? Really? Valen grinned. It's all I could think of. Better than get help, don't you think? They cast Gate, whispering Feraline's name. The mindscape welcomed them back, shimmering between flame and thought. Feraline stood tall, her wings folded. You have done well, she said, her voice warm. The first element reclaimed. She bowed her head. As promised, a riddle for your success. I start out tall, but the longer I stand, the smaller I get. What am I? Valen smiled, waiting a few moments before answering. A candle, Feraline nodded. And yet its flame still gives light, even as it dies. Behind her, a second portal shimmered open, the sevenfold mazework, jewel of the plane of Earth. A labyrinth of glowing stones, cavernous vaults, and gem-lit columns stretching into infinity. The brothers exchanged a look. One element down, 3 to go. And this one would require more than fire and illusion. This one would demand endurance, cunning, and patience. Chapter 3. Earth, silence, weight, depth. The brothers emerged from the portal onto a wide arch. They stood beneath a skyless vault of rock, the air heavy with the scent of dust and iron. The sevenfold mazework of the Tao sprawled before them, an unfathomable warren of passageways, chasms, and glittering pillars carved into the bones of the elemental plane of Earth. Here, even gravity felt akin to law. Malric muttered under his breath, remembering an old text. The sevenfold mazework confounds the mind. Its maze remains still, but shifts all the same. And in its paradox it remains absolute, a marvel of Earth. The columns that loomed around them were engraved with invisible runes, each topped with massive gemstones that burned with a cold, internal light. Glowing sapphires, emeralds, onyx, and red-veined garnet. Together, they painted the halls in subtle colour, and yet none of the colours moved or flickered. Time itself seemed caught in crystal. They passed by hundreds of Tao and their servants, some riding floating discs of stone, others slithering like worms through narrow gaps. They glanced their heads slightly but moved on, and paid little notice to the brothers' heed. Petitioners knelt before court, scribes whispering into stone-bound scrolls. Slaves toiled in silence, their eyes blank. As the twins turned down a lesser passage, a violet mist curled from a floor vent and shimmered across the stone. They glanced at each other. Too late. Sleep fell like a mountain. They awoke within silence with a portal shimmering ahead, a promise of escape. Malric stood, brushing gravel from his robes. We're alive. That's good. Valen narrowed his eyes. Try walking, you won't get far. Malric stepped forward and collided with an invisible wall. Solid, cold, unyielding. They spread their hands out, each discovering the edges of a cube, invisible and real, enclosing them like glass coffins. Malric dug into his bag of holding, retrieving a tome wrapped in chain and velvet. Flipping through pages thick with dust and sigils, he muttered aloud, "The fifth of the sevenfold. A maze of glass and force. The exit is always visible. The walls are not." He looked up. A maze of light. A trap for the clever. The maze reflects the bodies of those within it. Light passes through all things, except us. As they stepped, their bodies blocked the soft rays of the gemstone columns high above, revealing slight distortions in the air. Paths, invisible unless viewed by pattern. Piece by piece, they began to trace their route forward, careful to retrace their steps and not to double back. But soon, they were no longer alone. Minotaurs. At first, it was the echo of hooves, but then the snorting, the shudder of walls, the guttural roar. Creatures bred for the maze. Followers of Baphomet, demon lord of labyrinths, hatred and wrath. That they were here serving the Tao was unsettling. Why would the Khan consort with the demon's kin? Valen whispered, eyes narrowed. Perhaps to test resolve, or perhaps something worse stalks this place, Malric answered. They fought with precision, illusion and shadow against brute muscle and rage. One by one, the brothers used mirror image, phantasmal force, and shadow blades to confuse, trap, and outmaneuver. The twins used all their magical know-how to best them, and as they progressed, each step became harder. Every misstep drew the wrath of another beast. Every clever turn tightened the spiral around them, until at last they passed the final threshold and the portal rippled before them. They stepped through the portal and rising in front of them, an estate carved into a vertical rift. Every inch gleamed, walls inlaid with mica and pyrite, stairs carved of hematite, ceilings embedded with spinning jewels that caught the gemstone light like stars. At the center of the hall, upon a throne made of interlocking sapphires and black diamonds, lounged a noble Tao, veiled in threads of gravity-bound silk. His voice was like crushed marble. Well done, travelers. Escaping the fifth labyrinth is a feat beyond most. I am Hashatal, Vizier of the Gemline Court. Why have you come?" The brothers stepped forward with calm poise. "We seek the Rababar of the Tao, a relic said to be crafted from a rock skull and the hair of a high desert stallion, a gift for a Jan prince." Hashatal's eyes narrowed. "A rare thing, of great pride to our kind." He considered them. "I have one such instrument, but to part with it freely, gifts must be returned. Promises must be forged in stone." He stood, walking down steps that hummed with magic. "Bring me a vial of phlogiston from the flame Primordials mindscape. This fluid, unrefined, raw, is dangerous. But it enhances gemstone construction, and with it, we might sculpt divinity itself." A pause. The brothers exchanged a glance. "A promise made," said Malric. "A wish accepted," said Hashatal. The Rababa appeared before them, its strings gleaming as starlight, the rock skull polished to a resonant bone-white sheen. Another relic secured. Once again, they cast the gate spell, calling Firaline's name into the void. The portal shimmered and opened, and the flame-rippled mindscape welcomed them back. The Sphinx, still poised upon her glimmering coins, bowed her head. One more relic, and a promise behind it. They laid the Rababar before her. Vailin explained the bargain with the Tao. Firaline considered their words, her golden eyes narrowing. A simple task, with a dangerous consequence. "The phlogiston is volatile," she said. "Even the act of drawing it will stir the flames of thought. The primordial may begin to wake." She stood. "Then we must complete the remaining tasks before you return to that fire." She raised a paw, and another portal bloomed into being. A surge of wind nearly knocked them back. The endless sky, crystalline blue, filled with drifting islands and eternal currents. In the distance, a palace of ice and steel spiraled through the void, a glacial fortress hurtling endlessly through the elemental plane of air. The court of ice and steel. "The storm waits for no one," Firaline said, "and neither will its guardian." As the brothers prepared to step forward, she spoke once more. "When you stop to look, you can always see me, but if you try to touch me, you can never feel me. Although you walk towards me, I remain the same distance from you. What am I?" They paused. The answer came to them at once, spoken in mutual understanding. As the portal enveloped them and the air thinned into wind and freedom, the brothers stepped forward, toward lightning, sky, and a relic of breathless power. Chapter 4. Air. The brothers emerged from the portal into a dizzying abyss, their bodies tumbling through the endless openness of the elemental plane of air. Below them, though below was a matter of perception, floated the citadel of ice and steel, a drifting fortress carved from a glacier wreathed in lightning, eternally falling but never touching any horizon. And still they fell. Their minds, seasoned by planar travel, fought the instinct to panic. Gravity was a lie here. There was no down, only motion and direction. They drifted together, limbs tucked in ritual formation, until a figure coasted past them through the clouds. The figure reclined in the air, legs crossed as if seated on an invisible breeze. His robe was a patchwork of flowing silks and wind-blown scarves. Lightning played between his fingers like a harp string. His face was regal and amused. "Well met, Skyfarers. Falling with style, I see." The brothers glanced at each other, and one smiled. "We've been falling for some time now," said Malric. "Perhaps you could spare a story before we break through the clouds, or whatever counts as a flaw." The Djinn laughed, a deep, echoing sound that reverberated through the air. "Ah, seekers of tales and strange objects, you'll find both in me. I am Samadin al-Sadamil, former chronicler of the Zephyr courts, and presently exiled for the scandalous act of befriending an Efreet. Can you imagine? Easily. said Valen dryly. Samadin gestured theatrically. "Ah, but you two, fellow windwalkers, you'll appreciate this. I once heard tale of a weightless feather, enchanted with meaning beyond mass. It rests now in a djinn freehold, a drifting estate of puzzles, built by a maddening noble who sees riddles as better coin than gold. I've tried solving his games thrice. Thrice, I've been bested." The brothers exchanged a look. "We're looking for something ourselves, a white copper ring of fire." The djinn blinked. "Oh, you mean this old thing?" He held up a ring on one swirling hand. Valen frowned. "That was easier than expected." Samadin laughed again. "In the plane of air, rarity is a state of mind. Here, old magic grows common, and even treasures lose their luster. But if you'll help me retrieve the feather, the ring is yours." Malric grinned. "Done." With a swirling gesture, Samadin cast Windwalk, and the three transformed into drifting wisps of cloud. The freehold was a vision of silver and artistry. Suspended mid-sky on wind-carved terraces, the estate glowed with steel arches, ice domes, and carvings of tortoises, clouds, and celestial maps. The iconography honored Caliph Hussam al-Balil ben Nafat al-Ugayim, the master of the clouds, whose gaze was said to stretch across 100 skies. As they approached, they saw a djinn lounging beside a flickering blue brazier, toying with a magical lamp. "Back again, Samadin?" the noble djinn mused. "Ready to admit defeat?" "Not this time," he said. "I've brought assistance." Without hesitation, they were all drawn into the lamp. Inside, the laws of reality shifted. A dusty road stretched out before them, splitting into two obscure paths. In the center sat a desk illuminated by a hovering sunbeam, and atop it rested a pseudo-dragon, wings tucked, eyes narrowed in theatrical judgment. "Ahem," it said, clearing its throat. "I am the master of this realm, the illustrious and graceful Lady Petunia. I shall pose but one riddle, as required by the honored traditions of the Djinn Court." She gestured at the forked path behind her. "One road leads to the city of lies, where all lie. The other to the city of truth, where none do. A resident of one city stands at this very fork. You may ask one question to determine the correct path to truth. What will you ask?" Samadin immediately blurted, "Which way to the city of truth, please?" Lady Petunia grinned, pointing in two opposite directions simultaneously. The brothers chuckled. "We've had our share of riddles," said Malric. After a moment of thought, Valen stepped forward. "Graceful lady, tell us, where do you live?" She paused, then pointed a single claw down one road. The three proceeded down the path. She didn't indicate, smiling. They stepped into a hall of ice and steel, air shimmering with static. At its center stood a glass pedestal, on which lay a single white feather, balanced atop a magical scale. Beneath it, a plaque read, "What is light as a feather? Yet even the strongest being cannot live long without it." Samadin paced. "This is where I always fail. I've tried wind, freedom, thought. Nothing opens it. I'm a creature of storms. I can hurl lightning across worlds. But this one, this riddle defeats me." The brothers approached gently. "You're thinking like a djinn," said Valen. "Try thinking like someone mortal." Malric stepped beside the pedestal, eyes soft. "You forget, Samadin," he said. "We were born with weight. The planes of air give you freedom. But to us, freedom starts with the ability to breathe." Together, they leaned in, and with one simple breath, blew the feather from the scale. It fluttered gently into the djinn's hand. The chamber sang with magic. They were drawn from the lamp's domain back into the open skies of the freehold. The hosting djinn smirked. About time. Samadin, I thought you'd live in that lamp forever. The laughing Jinn removed the white copper ring of fire and placed it in Malric's hand. You've more than earned this. The brothers clasped his shoulder. Come find us in Tamarloon at Black Banner's Ride. We could use your stories, and you could use a place to stay. Samadin nodded, eyes shimmering with a rare softness. The wind carries me there. The brothers wove their hands and cast gate, the sigils igniting once more with the name of Firaline. The flame-washed mindscape opened before them. The Sphinx now sat at a golden desk, a mortar and pestle grinding glowing herbs and red dust. The air here pulsed with restrained heat. Without a word, they laid the ring at her paws. She looked up and gave a warm, solemn nod. 3 elements gathered, 3 tasks endured. You have done well. She stood, and as her wings extended, another portal shimmered into being, this one glistening with waterlight and refracted waves. Beyond it, the city of glass, a perfect sphere of crystalline walls, half filled with water and half with breathable air. Structures of coral, pearl, and marble rose from both halves, as merfolk and air-breathing beings coexisted in a metropolis of delicate balance. One remains, said Firaline. One final gift. She paused, eyes gleaming. I am taken from a mine and shut in a wooden case from which I am never released, and yet I am used by almost every student. What am I? She smiled knowingly and turned back to her alchemical work. The brothers stepped through, into water, light, and the final test. Chapter 5. Water. The portal shimmered. As the brothers stepped through, a wave of cool silence engulfed them. Pressure pressed briefly against their lungs, then equalized. They had entered the city of glass. It floated within the elemental plane of water, a perfect sphere of crystal and current, half filled with water, half with breathable air. The boundary between these halves shimmered, similar to quicksilver. Coral towers and shell domes rose through both mediums, some suspended upside down above others, tethered by graceful archways or strands of kelp-like light. Currents flowed through broad avenues, glass walkways, bubble buoys, and magically levitating platforms helped visitors of many forms traverse the city. The scent of salt and alchemy lingered in the air. This was the sigil of the elements, crossroads of commerce and culture across the inner planes. As they drifted into its upper half, ankle deep in gently swirling water, the brothers marveled at the citizens, Marids with fins like silken cloaks and voices like song. Merfolk moving effortlessly between stone towers and water fountains. Jan in silvery robes walked alongside fish-scaled messengers and pearl-draped couriers. In the ale district, the water was lower, waist-high, and warm with laughter. Dwarves and gnomes congregated in submerged beer halls, their ale floating in enchanted globes, their gear infused with water-resistant enchantments. From a side alley, a gnome waved them over. "You two look like you've never brewed bubbles before," she said with a grin. "Come, if you're traveling the plains, you'll want a moment's rest before the tide turns." The brothers, ever curious, followed. She led them to Rutger's Outfitters, a stout stone structure that gleamed with dwarven runes and glass-blown signage. Inside, walls were lined with artifacts from across the plains. Breathing stones, planar lodestones, anchors of air and gravity, and maps that rewrote themselves in real time. After gathering supplies, she took them to the Element Ale Brewhouse, a local institution built inside a repurposed kelp vault. There, glowing drinks sparkled like bottled aurorae. Between drinks and shared meals of salt-baked eel and storm crab fritters, they told a table of dwarves and gnomes of their quest. One dwarf, a bearded titan, leaned close. "You'll be wanting to speak with Shah Tammuz Al-Rahad then. Him and Jalal, Dragonblood. They co-rule this city now. Fine folk, both of them, if your story's good. And you'll need a good one for the Storm Rider's Pearl. That item's genie-born and powerful. It was gifted once by the Padishah of the Marid to an elven explorer. Lets you return to wherever it last was. Many a Marid gave them as tokens of love or debt. Some say they carry the sea's memory itself. The table murmured, and the dwarf continued. There was a time this city was wholly under the Shah's rule, but the people chafed under tribute. Then came Jalal Dragonblood, a gold-scaled half-elf storyteller. Said he could bring sunlight to the city within 7 days. Impossible, they said. On the 7th day, he rode a dragon through a portal to the plane of radiance. Light spilled over the dome like a new dawn, and with that, he won the wager. Now, the city is ruled by balance, between song and storm. The gnomes raised their glasses. To balance! The twins exchanged a look and then asked, "Will you guide us to the palace?" A procession of dwarves and gnomes, friends newly made. "We come in search of the Storm Rider's Pearl," said Malric. "A gift for a Sphinx caught in fire and mind. We have told tales and earned artifacts from the other elements. We offer now our story, in full." The thrones leaned forward in curiosity. With a whispered invocation, the brothers activated the deck of illusions, and the stage was set. The city of brass rose before them in projected flame and metal, where they battled an Efreet in a pit of fire, weaving spell and shadow to retrieve the storm armor. Through winding illusions, they conjured the sevenfold maze work, its invisible glass maze twisting beneath their feet. They recounted their encounter with the Dao noble and the promise made in exchange for the Rababa of the Dao. Then, the endless sky of the plane of air, the laughter of Sa'amuddin al-Sadamil, the riddles within the jinn's lamp, the answer carried on a breath, and the granting of the white copper ring of fire. Each tale was painted in light and words, with gestures interwoven like musical chords. They finished with the gnome's guidance to this city and the story of Jalal's own wager with the sun. Silence held the room. Even the water rippled with anticipation. Then applause, sincere, reverent. Jalal stood and bowed low. "I once entertained this palace with tales of dragons and dawn, but never did I think to sit and be entertained myself. Thank you." Tammuz al-Rahad lifted a hand. From the waves rose a single pearl. It flickered lightning trapped in water, storm and current in balance. "You have earned it. Return it when your story ends and bring us a new tale to share." They bowed deeply. Around them, a crowd had gathered. Merfolk, Marids, Jan, all held silent by the wonder of the tale. With the pearl in hand, the brothers opened one final gate, the currents parting to form the sigils that led to the mind realm of Firulin, the Sphinx. The scene was familiar now, an eternal flame landscape locked in thought and silence. But Firulin sat differently now, upright, poised, and expectant. Before her, they laid the final artifact, the storm armor, the Rababa of the Dao, the white copper ring, the Storm Rider's Pearl, all now present. The Sphinx smiled, slowly. The four elements, the four anchors, the balance is restored, within me and around me. She stood. Her form shimmered slightly, as if finally able to stretch against unseen chains. "You have done what none have dared. My mind is whole again, and the primordial, for now, remains asleep." From her paw, she produced a final gift, a gem of fire and radiance. A promise fulfilled, a token of my gratitude. This flame will find you if ever you are lost. She stepped forward and at last walked through the open gate. The brothers stood alone in the mindscape, now flickering and fading. Epilogue, the warm light. Night fell upon Tarmaloon, and the sea winds brought with them the salt-touched scent of distant shores and flickering opportunity. Within the golden-lit halls of a Darren tavern, where silk-robed traders and cloaked adventurers gathered over goblets and wagers, a tale was being spun. At the heart of the room stood a djinn, robed in storm-threaded silks, rings clinking like wind chimes. His voice was soft thunder, smooth and heavy with wonder. He stood not on the floor, but hovered inches above it, never truly touching down. "Twin brothers," he said, eyes sweeping over the crowd, illusionist born beneath a burning sky, raised within sight of a primordial flame. They wandered the inner planes to restore balance. They walked in fire, were lost in glass, flew through endless sky, and told tales so fine the sea itself listened. Around him the audience leaned closer. Merchants, elves, sailors and tarn traders, those deal-makers of plainer commerce, nodded, enraptured. They earned the artifacts, with wit, with magic, and with loyalty. "And now," he said as he sipped from a floating cup of cloud wine, "they dwell just up the rise. Their shop at Black Banner's Ride, a place of riddles and relics, of stories half-finished and dreams well bought." A human leaned forward, gold, threaded ledger in hand. "Where do we sign up?" he asked. "We want to fund their magical expeditions, bring their wonders to the markets of Neverwinter and beyond." The djinn chuckled. "No need for coin. They need curiosity. If you wish to follow them, bring not your purse, but your courage." Far above the harbour, where the moonlight met mist, a soft hill cleared of buildings offered a perfect view of the city. There, beneath an illusion of starlight and woven shadow, the twin brothers sat beside Firaline the Sphinx. No words passed between them, only the quiet clink of cups, the subtle hum of distant magic, and the gentle exhale of peace. Her mind was whole. The curse was undone. The pillar of fire that once blazed uncontrollably now stood as a beacon, a warm, steady flame that bathed the city in a gentle glow, a hearthlight for a city of seekers. Around them, the night wisps danced, silent threads of possibility. And on their faces, as they looked to the horizon, where sea met sky and magic met memory, a balance, the way of the four elements,